They say after midnight, the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest, and the world becomes a much scarier place. Tonight, you'll hear 3 of the scariest stories from Reddit. Listen at your own risk, and whatever you do, don't press pause. In the middle of the night, if you hear scratching at your window, you should probably just ignore it. It's probably just a branch or an animal or, maybe a trick of the wind. But what if it's not? What if it's something more sinister? Our next Reddit user will remain anonymous. Their story goes back to when they were in college. They lived with 2 other people in a house. One of them was a bit of a prankster, known for playing really cruel jokes on their friends. So one day he decided to play a prank on our protagonist. He wrote on the whiteboard, "I haven't showered for a week. Don't open the bathroom door," then locked the bathroom and went out. Our protagonist thought it was pretty funny, but that night at 3 a.m. they needed to pee. The bathroom door was still locked, so thinking it was pretty funny, they started knocking on the door. "Hey, let me in. Hey, let me in." But instead of responding, they heard what sounded like chains dragging metal moans. Assuming it was their roommate being a jerk, they knocked even louder. And finally, the door unlocked itself. When they opened it, they saw that the bathroom was empty. There was no sign of their roommate anywhere, and yet somehow the door had unlocked itself. And as they closed the door, they swore they heard a voice inside say, "Thank you." Our next Reddit user also prefers to remain anonymous. He was working as a security guard in a large office building. One night, while doing his rounds, he noticed that one of the windows on the top floor was open. The window was on a very high floor, and it was in the middle of winter. So obviously someone had left it open by accident, and a draft was coming through. He checked the room and everything seemed fine. No break-in signs or anything like that. So he decided to close the window himself. As he approached the window, he heard what sounded like whispers. He couldn't make out what they were saying, but it sounded like there were multiple voices. He ignored it and closed the window. But the moment he did, the whispers became screams. Why? Then they stopped, looked around, assuming that whoever had been screaming had run off. But the door was locked, and there was no way in or out. He radioed for backup, then waited. But those screams never made a sound again, and to this day he has no idea who was behind them. Our next Reddit user was home alone one night when they heard what sounded like screaming in the middle of the night. They were home alone one night when they heard what sounded like screaming in the middle of the night. Thinking it was weird, they grabbed a baseball bat and went to investigate. They checked the closets and under the bed, but they couldn't find anything. Then they remembered that their dog, who normally slept in the living room, was missing. They searched for their dog all over the house, but couldn't find them. Just when they were about to call the police, they heard a noise in the attic. Thinking that their dog must have gotten up there, they cautiously climbed the ladder. But when they reached the top, they found nothing. Yet somehow, moments later, they heard a noise at the top of the stairs and the sound of heavy footsteps running away. To this day, they have no idea what that noise was or where it came from. If you want to hear more scary stories from Reddit, stay tuned for more content. And remember, don't press pause. You never know what might be hiding in the shadows. I was house-sitting for a friend while he went on vacation with his family. His home is in a rural area, so I was pretty surprised when at 12:15 a.m. I heard a knock on the door. I checked my phone. It was well past his family's bedtime, and I hadn't heard a peep out of them all evening. I figured maybe it was just some kids playing a trick, or perhaps an overly eager Jehovah's Witness, since they don't have any lights on outside, and I had inadvertently forgotten to turn on the porch light when I answered the door. But there was no one there. 3 slow, heavy knocks. That was odd. Whatever it was didn't seem to want me to hear them. The knocking came again. 3 slow, heavy knocks. And then I heard what sounded like whispering on the other side of the door. I froze. Nobody should be here. What do I do? I wanted to call the police, but the knocking continued, perfectly spaced, every 30 seconds. I waited. Then I heard the knocking again. 3 slow, heavy knocks, louder this time. Now, whoever was out there was definitely trying to get my attention. So I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. As I did, the knocking came again, perfectly spaced. I pressed the phone to my ear and whispered urgently, "Hello, 911, I need some help. Someone is outside my door and I think they might be trying to break in." The operator asked me where I was and I told her my friend's address. Okay, ma'am, I have police on the way. Do you feel like you are in any danger right now? I could hear the whispering again. Closer now. Yes, I do. Please hurry. The line went dead. I looked down to see that I had accidentally hung up. But before I could dial 911 back, the knocking stopped. Only the whispering remained. It seemed to be coming from right behind the door. Let me in, please. Let me in. Then a heavy thud. Was someone trying to break into the house? My eyes darted around the room searching for an escape, a weapon, anything to help me. There was nothing. I was trapped. I could hear the whispering again. This time it was right by the door. Let me in, please. I just want to talk to you. Please let me in. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes fixed on the door. The handle began to turn. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I backed away until my foot hit something solid. I fell down hard, scraping my palms on the floor. I scrambled backwards, bumping into things, my heart pounding in my chest. The door burst open, and I fell silent. The police were there. I explained what had happened, and they asked me if I wanted to make a police report. I agreed, and they took my statement. The officer even took photos of the scrape marks on my palms and the muddy footprints that were now all over my welcome mat. They followed the footprints in the snow to the edge of the property line and into the woods. I watched them go. About 20 minutes later, one of the officers came back. He said that they hadn't found anyone in the woods, but they had found some tire tracks that appeared to match the muddy footprints. They followed those tire tracks to a car that was parked on the road about a quarter-mile away from my friend S.'s house. The car was gone, but not long after, the owner showed up. He was very nervous and couldn't really explain why he had been in the area, except to say that he had been drinking and got lost. The officer accepted his explanation, but I wasn't convinced. As we watched, the officer returned to my friend's house and came back with one of the muddy shoes that had been left on the porch. He asked the man if the shoe looked familiar. It was getting late, and I knew that my friend would be worried sick if I didn't let him know that I was okay. Plus, I was still a little shaken up, so I asked the officer if I was free to go. He said that I was, but he warned me to be careful, because whoever had been at my door might still be out there. I thanked him and hurried home. I called my friend to let him know that everything was okay. I told him about the footprints, the whispering, the muddy shoe. "What are you talking about? That's crazy," he said. "There is no shoe. You must have imagined the whole thing." But when I described the shoe, he did seem to remember it. "Oh, that shoe. I think it was just a prank." Some kids like to mess around sometimes. He didn't seem concerned at all. He just kept telling me that I had imagined the rest. But when I hung up, I noticed something in the background. His front door had been ripped off its hinges. And tonight we have a special Halloween episode of People Calling in the Night. Our first story comes from a Reddit user. 1 a.m. call. I woke up to my phone ringing at 1 a.m. It was my mom's number. When I answered, all I heard was breathing, and a voice whispered, "Go back to sleep." I was obviously freaked out sitting in bed at this point. I could hear the person breathing heavily on the other end. I don't know if it was a man or a woman. I could just barely hear their breathing and some humming noises they were making. I waited a few seconds and then hung up. I decided to call back the number, but it went straight to voicemail. I told my mom that I had gotten a weird call from her and asked if everything was okay. She said that she hadn't called me and that she was asleep right now. I was confused because I had gotten the call from her phone. I could still hear the breathing noises coming from my phone. I ended up hanging up and going back to sleep. The next morning I told my dad about the call. He said that Mom was asleep next to him the whole night and that she didn't have her phone with her. When I checked my phone, I saw that the calls actually came from my own number, so I don't really know what happened. It was probably just some weird prank call. But still, it's creepy when a call comes from your own phone. Our next Reddit user has a very similar story. I received a series of menacing phone calls from my own number at 3 a.m. I live in a different state from my family. It's 3 a.m. and I'm awoken by my phone ringing. I look over and see that it's my own number. I let it go to voicemail, and I hear a series of heavy breaths, followed by a low voice saying, "Wake up, wake up." I immediately hung up and went back to sleep. An hour later, my phone rings again. I let it go to voicemail, and the same thing happens. Heavy breathing followed by a raspy whisper saying, "You can't hide." At this point, I'm freaked out and I call my landline, which is on the other side of the apartment. I thought maybe it was a faulty connection. My brother picks up and I explain what's happening. He thinks it's really funny and hangs up on me. A few minutes later, it rings again. By this point, I'm wide awake and freaking out. I grab my phone and scream into the receiver, "Who is this?" There's a pause, and then a familiar voice says, "It's me." I lived alone at the time. I must have gotten so worked up that my hand slipped and I hit the redial button. I tried to call back, but the call was disconnected. The next day, my brother admitted that it was him playing a prank on me, but he swore he wasn't doing it while I was asleep, because he was at his girlfriend's house. I never did figure out who that third voice belonged to. And our final story comes from another Reddit user. Phone calls from beyond the grave. This happened to me a few years ago. I was woken up in the middle of the night by my phone ringing. I looked at the caller ID, and it was my grandma's number. Now, my grandma passed away 2 years prior to this, so I picked up the phone and said hello. Silence. I said hello again. Then I heard what sounded like my grandmother's voice very faintly saying hello. I freaked out and slammed the phone down. I didn't want to call back, but my mom said it might be an important call, so I answered. The same thing happened. I heard a faint hello. That's when I noticed that it was showing that the call was coming from my own phone. I didn't have the heart to call back, and ended up just turning my phone off for the night. The next morning, my mom called me and asked why I didn't answer my phone. I explained about the creepy calls and how it was my own phone, and she said that it must have been a bad connection. She also found it odd that I didn't answer my phone because I always do. Those are our 3 scary stories of people calling in the night. If you watched this after midnight, good luck sleeping tonight. Which story made you shiver? Tell me in the comments and subscribe for more true horror every week. Thanks for watching.